Rumors swirling across social media tonight have ignited a storm unlike anything fans expected. According to unverified reports bouncing from blog to blog, whispers are spreading that Mena may have dropped a massive revelation, claiming her child is connected to none other than Mendeecees. Nothing about these claims has been confirmed, but the sheer intensity of the chatter has sent fans scrambling for answers. And the internet hasn't taken a breath since. Comment sections are exploding. Podcast hosts are speculating non-stop. And even longtime viewers of the love and hip-hop universe say they've never seen the community this shaken. And as if the alleged news wasn't shocking enough, more online sources are claiming that Yandy, stunned by the circulating story, has supposedly decided she can't take any more of the emotional chaos. Some reports insist she's ready to walk away entirely, fueling a narrative that has everyone glued to their screens. Again, none of this has been confirmed, but the noise around it is getting louder with every passing minute. If these rumors keep spreading at this pace, tonight might just become one of the wildest nights in reality TV commentary history. Stay with us because this story is heating up by the second dot as these circulating reports kept gaining traction online. The entire conversation around the alleged revelation began pulling in reactions from every corner of the reality TV world. People were not just reading the claims. They were dissecting every screenshot, every repost, every supposed voice note, trying to piece together how a situation this explosive could have even begun. Some fans were convinced that something must have been brewing behind the scenes for a long time, while others argued that the timing felt too sudden, almost like someone had waited for the perfect moment to set everything on fire. Whatever the truth may be, the chatter around it was growing with a kind of intensity that suggested nobody was ready to look away. Within hours, blogs started echoing the same storyline that Erica had supposedly told someone in private, that Mendeecees was the father of her child, and that this claim had apparently made its way into the hands of people eager to spread it. Again, nothing had been confirmed, but the repetition alone was enough to make it feel larger than life. The more the rumor spun, the heavier the atmosphere around the situation became, because if there was even a fraction of truth in it, the fallout would be massive. And that's exactly what had fans on edge. The idea that the family dynamic everyone had seen play out for years on screen might be facing a fracture unlike anything before. What made this even more intense were the emotional stakes attached to every person involved. The online audience wasn't just watching characters. They were watching people they had followed for years, people whose journeys they felt invested in, even if from afar. So, when these reports suggested that Yandy had been blindsided, the shock wasn't limited to her. Thousands of viewers said they felt the same jolt of disbelief just reading the allegations. Many couldn't wrap their heads around how a revelation like this, real or not, could even appear at this point in their lives. And naturally, once fans started reacting, the story took on a life of its own. Some online voices began speculating about what the private conversations between Yandy and Mendeecees might have sounded like. After these claims surfaced, people imagined moments of raised emotions, tearful confrontations, and questions that had no clear answers. Others described the situation as heartbreaking, saying that even the suggestion of such a revelation could put strain on any marriage, let alone one already under public scrutiny. Messages poured in from viewers across different platforms, all trying to make sense of how something this heavy could appear out of nowhere, and the uncertainty fed the fire even more. At the same time, a completely different wave of reactions focused on Erica. Some people believed she wouldn't have allowed such a claim to circulate, unless she wanted something to be known. Others felt she might be caught in the middle of some twisted misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Commentators online described her as someone who rarely holds back when she feels something strongly, which made the rumor feel both unbelievable and somehow believable at the same time. Whether she had actually said anything was still unclear, but her name being tied to the situation was enough to stir another round of speculation. People wondered what her side of the story might be, whether she would come forward to deny everything or whether she would stay silent and let the chaos unfold without stepping in. Meanwhile, fans of the show pointed out that these kinds of rumors often appear during the most unexpected moments, especially when tension is already building in the background. Some commenters swore they had picked up on small hints weeks ago, saying certain interactions suddenly made sense now that these claims were out. Others argued those were just coincidences and that everyone was reading too much into things. Either way, the story had people hooked, not because they believed it entirely, but because the emotional stakes were impossible to ignore through all of this. One detail circulating across social feeds stood out the most: the claim that Yandy had allegedly reached her breaking point. The rumor suggested she was tired of fighting battles she never asked for. Oh, tired of being caught in the crossfire of issues that didn't originate with her. Some blogs claimed she had been quiet for days, avoiding the spotlight, not wanting to add more fuel to the fire. Other posts described her as someone reflecting deeply on everything she had already endured over the years. Whether any of this was true was impossible to know. but the narrative painted her as a woman exhausted by constant emotional turbulence. That's where the divorce chatter started picking up momentum. The idea wasn't presented as a confirmed action, but rather as speculation. Whisperers suggesting she might have finally reached a point of no return. Fans began debating what they thought she should do, with one side urging her to protect her peace and step away, while the other side insisted she should wait for clarity before making any drastic decisions. Everyone had an opinion, and the conversation turned into a wave of emotional reactions from people felt attached to her journey in ways only long-term viewers could understand. Then the dialogue across social media shifted once more, growing even more dramatic as some users imagined the emotional breakdown Mendeecees might be experiencing. If he had indeed seen the rumor before it spread, the thought of him being confronted with such a claim, even as a rumor, sparked a whole series of imagined scenes, phone calls filled with confusion, attempts to clarify, moments of disbelief, and possible conversations that may have been too painful to process all at once. Fans wrote about how intense that kind of moment would be for anyone, especially someone whose relationship had always been under a microscope. The online audience wasn't just watching, they were creating entire emotional landscapes around the people involved, filling in the blanks with the rawness they expected behind closed doors. And so the story kept expanding, turning into a tangle of emotional reactions, imagined confrontations, and swirling uncertainty. Nobody knew what was real. Nobody knew what was exaggerated. But the drama surrounding the rumor had already taken hold of the entire conversation, pulling everyone deeper into the storm of speculation that refused to slow down. The night kept getting louder, each new post adding another layer to a situation that felt like it was on the verge of spiraling even further. And as the noise reached this height, the question everyone kept asking was how the people at the center of this storm would respond now that the rumor had gained unstoppable traction. As the online discussion kept spiraling, more voices began weighing in, each one adding a new angle to an already tangled situation. People who claimed to have inside knowledge started dropping vague hints, the kind that never confirmed anything, yet stirred the pot just enough to keep the story breathing. One person wrote that the tension behind the scenes had been building for months, suggesting that some cracks were already forming long before these claims surfaced. Another insisted that this rumor wasn't spontaneous at all, but the result of someone finally deciding they were done keeping secrets buried. None of these statements came with proof, yet the way they were phrased made the audience lean in closer, as if waiting for the next breadcrumb to fall. The biggest shock came when a supposed eyewitness account started circulating, describing an intense confrontation that may have taken place earlier in the week. The post detailed how voices were raised, how questions were asked with a kind of desperation that only comes from deep emotional impact, and how the atmosphere felt heavy enough to suffocate anyone standing nearby. People couldn't tell whether the story was exaggerated or completely fabricated, but the descriptions felt cinematic enough to fuel the entire conversation. Many viewers said they could imagine every moment, every gesture, every pause in the room because the emotional weight matched the kind of turmoil the rumor had created online. Before long, the conversation shifted to the families connected to each person involved. Fans wondered how relatives might be reacting to the rumor, how parents and siblings might be processing the growing speculation, especially since they were often pulled into the spotlight, whether they liked it or not. Some wrote that families usually knew the truth long before the public did, while others believed they were just as blindsided as the audience. One comment described how difficult it must be for anyone watching their loved ones become the subject of such heated discussion, especially when every detail was being twisted, interpreted, or magnified for entertainment. And then came the imagined dialogues. People online began crafting entire conversations between the rumored parties, trying to capture the rawness they believed must have erupted behind closed doors. In one version, someone claimed Yandy might have asked questions in a voice that trembled between hurt and disbelief, trying to understand how a rumor this powerful could suddenly appear. Another imagined Mendeecees pacing the room, insisting he didn't know how the story started, trying to grab hold of clarity while everything around him spiraled. A few even speculated that Erica would be somewhere defending her side, telling whoever would listen that she wasn't looking to create chaos, that she was just speaking her truth. If she had said anything at all, what made these imagined scenes so gripping was the emotional honesty people poured into them. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was a collective attempt to make sense of the confusion, to fill in the silence with something that felt believable in the context of the rumor. And even though none of these imagined dialogues had any evidence behind them, they spread like wildfire because they sounded exactly like the kind of emotionally charged confrontations viewers had seen unfold on camera in past seasons. Meanwhile, others began analyzing every public interaction that had happened in recent months, replaying old clips, scrutinizing interviews, and digging into social media posts with a level of attention that bordered on investigative. Some swore they saw tension they hadn't noticed before. Others found moments of distance that suddenly felt meaningful. One fan said that a particular look exchanged during an event now made sense in light of the rumor. Another insisted the story didn't line up with anything they had seen, arguing that people were stretching things to fit the drama. The back-and-forth debates created a whirlwind of opinions, none fully aligned, yet all feeding the ongoing fascination at the same time. Online creators began producing their own commentary videos, each one diving deeper into the supposed timeline. One host suggested that if the rumor were even partially true, it could explain a handful of cryptic messages that had been posted weeks earlier. Another pointed out that timing always plays a key role in stories like this, implying that someone might have released the rumors strategically. These creators weren't claiming to know the truth. They were simply adding layers of interpretation that kept the audience hooked. Their dramatic retellings, exaggerated tones, and intense reactions only drew more people into the conversation, turning the rumor into a full-blown spectacle. Then the rumor took another complicated turn. A circulating post claimed that Yandy might have taken some time away from home to clear her mind, choosing to stay somewhere quiet while she decided how to navigate the situation. Supporters flocked to that detail, saying she deserved a moment of peace after years of emotional battles. Others questioned whether that part of the rumor was fabricated just to push the divorce narrative further. But the idea of her stepping away struck a chord with many, especially those who had followed her journey closely and felt protective of her. As the divorce chatter amplified, some fans started writing emotional messages about how difficult it must be for anyone to face a decision like that, especially if they felt they had fought long and hard to keep their relationship intact. They described how heartbreaking it was to imagine someone sitting alone, trying to decide whether to walk away from a love that had survived so much in the past. One commenter wrote that sometimes the emotional weight of constant storms becomes too heavy to carry. Another said they hoped the rumor wasn't true because the two of them had gone through too much together to let an unconfirmed claim tear them apart. Then the story shifted to Mendeecees again, with fans imagining how he must be reacting to the wave of accusations flooding the public space. Some believed he would be angry that his name was being dragged into a story built on speculation. Others felt he might be hurt, confused, or overwhelmed by the emotional stakes involved. There were even comments imagining him trying to reach out to Erica for clarity, demanding to know whether she had actually said anything or whether people were twisting her words. The emotional tension that fans created around him felt almost like a silent storm, building pressure moment by moment, as if things weren't already intense. Another round of rumor details started spreading, this time claiming that both households were dealing with sleepless nights, worrying about what might come next. Posts described the atmosphere as heavy, filled with unanswered questions, quiet rooms, and the lingering feeling that something had fundamentally shifted. Whether any of these details were real or just part of the exaggerated narrative, they painted a picture that made the audience lean in even further. What kept fueling the fire was the silence. None of the people at the center of the rumor had addressed anything directly. That silence left space for speculation to multiply. Fans debated whether the silence meant the claims were false or whether the situation was too raw and too complicated for anyone to respond immediately. Silence has a way of amplifying tension, and in this case, it made the entire rumor feel like a simmering flame that could break into something much bigger at any moment. And the longer that silence continued, the more curious everyone became, waiting to see what direction the story might take. As the emotional storm continued to grow, as more hours passed and the rumor refused to slow down, the silence around it started to feel heavier than the story itself. People online described it like a cloud stretching over every corner of the situation, affecting not only the individuals at the center, but everyone watching from the outside. The longer nobody spoke, the more fans created their own explanations, convinced that emotions behind the scenes had reached a point where nobody knew what to say or how to respond. Some believed the silence meant people were trying to calm the storm privately, while others insisted it was proof that the rumor had shaken them too deeply to address right away. The speculation grew even bigger when a series of vague posts appeared across different platforms. They weren't directly linked to any of the individuals involved, but the timing made everyone raise their eyebrows. One message talked about trust being fragile, another hinted at unexpected truths surfacing at the worst possible moments, and a third mentioned the difficulty of choosing between holding on and letting go. These posts didn't name anyone, didn't reference anything specific, yet somehow they felt connected to the ongoing narrative. Fans picked them apart line by line, convinced they were subtle reflections of what might be happening behind closed doors. Then came another wave of emotional reactions from viewers who had followed the cast members for years. Some wrote long messages explaining how deeply invested they felt because they had watched these relationships grow from their early stages. They said the rumor felt personal, almost like watching a friend go through something painful. Others reacted with frustration, complaining that people always jump to conclusions without waiting for clarity. One user wrote that the internet thrives on chaos, and that stories like this get blown out of proportion because people want excitement more than truth. Another said that even if the rumor wasn't real, the emotional damage it could cause was no small thing, and that alone made the situation heartbreaking. As the conversation intensified, some fans began imagining what might be happening inside the households affected by the rumor. They pictured quiet rooms filled with tension, people sitting apart trying to understand the emotional weight of what was spreading online. They imagined long moments of silence where nobody knew what to say, mixed with moments of raised voices when pain and confusion became too heavy to contain. Others described how exhausting it must be for anyone living through a storm caused by a rumor they didn't start. They speculated that the emotional pressure could make even simple conversations feel impossible. And while the audience kept constructing scenes, another twist in the narrative began circulating. This time, the rumor suggested that close friends of those involved were urging everyone to stay calm until the truth became clear. Some posts claimed that certain friends were trying to mediate, encouraging communication and understanding instead of allowing assumptions to take control. These details added a new layer to the story, one that painted the situation not just as a chaotic storm, but as something people were trying to manage quietly, away from public eyes. Whether these claims were true or just another round of online imagination didn't matter. They added depth to a story already filled with emotional complexity. At the same time, there were whispers that some people close to this situation were growing frustrated with how quickly the rumor had escalated. These supposed insiders were described as exhausted, tired of seeing the same exaggerated details spread over and over again. Some fans said they understood the frustration, pointing out how damaging rumors can be when they involve family, children, and relationships. Others felt that frustration was a sign that the rumor had struck a nerve, though they couldn't agree on which part of the story might have triggered such reactions. The conflicting interpretations only pushed the conversation further into emotional territory. The drama escalated again when someone claimed that Yandy might have been surrounded by close friends who were offering support during the chaos. These posts described her as quiet, reflective, and emotionally drained, trying to process everything while maintaining some sense of composure. The idea of her struggling to hold herself together resonated with many, especially those who had admired her strength in past seasons. Fans began posting messages saying they hoped she had people around her who truly understood what she might be going through. Whether the rumor was real or not, the compassion in these comments created a softer layer to the narrative, balancing the chaos with humanity. Meanwhile, the rumor about Mendeecees grew even more intense. Some posts portrayed him as struggling to breathe under the weight of the situation, pacing back and forth, trying to make sense of the swirling accusations. Others imagined him reaching out to people he trusted, trying to find clarity while fighting the anxiety of being tied to a claim that could shift his entire reality. Fans painted him as someone caught between disbelief and anger, unsure whether to focus on defending himself or comforting the people he cared about. The imagined turmoil around him became one of the most discussed parts of the story. And then the rumors circled back to Erica. Posts appeared claiming she was dealing with her own emotional fallout as her name continued to trend. Some commenters said they believed she was overwhelmed by the unexpected attention, while others claimed she might be the one holding hidden emotions that had finally spilled over. A few speculated that she was staying silent because she didn't want the situation to spiral even further. Others argued she might be preparing to speak out, waiting for the right moment to share her perspective. Each interpretation sparked more debates, none leading to answers, all adding more depth to the emotional storm. The speculation reached another level when fans began imagining what might happen if the rumor grew even bigger before anyone addressed it. People discussed how misunderstandings can spread, how they can turn into emotional explosions that leave lasting scars. They talked about how painful it must be to watch your name become part of a narrative you didn't shape, especially when that narrative affects the people closest to you. Some fans expressed sympathy for everyone involved, saying that even if the story was false, the emotional impact was real simply because of the way people were reacting to it. Despite the chaos, some commenters tried to calm the situation, urging others not to jump to conclusions. They reminded everyone that rumors often twist truths beyond recognition. They said the best thing to do is wait, because the truth always finds its way out, no matter how long it takes. These voices of reason were scattered across the noise, small but steady, trying to bring balance to a conversation drowning in emotion. But for the audience caught up in the unfolding drama, waiting felt impossible. Too many unanswered questions, too many imagined scenarios, too many emotional stakes built into the narrative. The silence, the speculation, the tension, it all blended into a story that felt like it could shift at any moment, depending on who spoke next or what new details surfaced. The air around the rumor felt thick, charged, and ready to take another unpredictable turn. And as the night stretched on, more people gathered in comment sections, waiting, watching, refreshing their feeds, convinced that something bigger might be coming. As the emotional pressure deepened even further, the air inside the house had turned heavy, almost too thick to breathe. After everything that had been said, the silence felt louder than any argument they had ever had. Mendeecees stood near the window, his hands on the sill, staring at the sky without really seeing anything. He looked like someone trying to make sense of a storm that had already ripped through everything. Yandy watched him from across the room, her chest tight, her thoughts tangled, her heart exhausted from carrying more than it was ever meant to hold. He asked her, in a quiet voice. They could just sit and talk everything out, but she didn't feel like there was anything left to talk about. She felt something inside her shift, something that had been cracking slowly for years. The truth about Erica, Mena, and the baby wasn't just a shock. It was the final weight on a foundation that had been weakening for a long time. She had put in so much effort, so much patience, so much forgiveness, and now it all felt pointless. She walked toward him, slow and steady. It's like someone making peace with a decision that hurts but still feels right. She took a breath and told him the words he was hoping not to hear. She said she couldn't carry the weight of this relationship anymore. Not after everything. Not after this. The way she said it wasn't angry or loud. It was calm, honest, and full of a pain. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. It hit Mendeecees like a cold slap, leaving him speechless. He finally met her eyes, and in them, he saw something that scared him more than anything: finality. He asked if she really thought this was the only solution. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at her hands, then back up, and said that love alone wasn't enough to save something that had been breaking over and over. She said trust was like glass. Once cracked too many times, it never looks the same again. Mendeecees didn't argue. He seemed frozen in place, as if trying to stop time with his silence. Lights in the room flickered softly, casting shadows across the walls, making everything feel even heavier. Yandy turned toward the closet and began taking out her things. She folded her clothes carefully, almost too carefully, as if steadying her hands could steady her heart. Every shirt, every memory, every little thing she packed felt like closing another chapter of her life. But even though her hands trembled, her decision denotes watched her, his jaw tight, his breath uneven. His mind searched desperately for the right thing to say. But nothing came. He wanted to explain, to promise, to swear he could fix it all. But even he knew it wouldn't change what had already happened. When Yandy zipped the bag, the sound echoed in the quiet room like a goodbye. Neither of them wanted to say out loud. He reached for her hand, but she gently pulled away. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, only acceptance. She told him that she didn't hate him. She said she didn't even blame him for everything, but she needed to save herself now because staying would only break her more. She said love should not feel like surviving. And for a long time, that's exactly what she had been doing. He listened, his expression softening into something close to defeat. He asked if she had been hurting long before this latest truth came out. She nodded slowly. She said that pain doesn't always show itself all at once. Sometimes it builds in small pieces, piling up until one final truth becomes too heavy and everything collapses. Erica Mena's baby wasn't the whole reason, just the last piece that made everything impossible to ignore. Mendeecees lowered his gaze, understanding more in that moment than he had in years. There was nothing left to defend, nothing left to argue. Yandy walked toward the stairs, each step echoing through the house. Mena stayed where he was, watching her like she was slipping through his fingers in slow motion. She wasn't leaving out of fury. She was leaving because her heart had reached its limit. She opened the front door, and the cool night air brushed against her face. It felt like a quiet kind of freedom, mixed with heartbreak and relief in equal measure. She turned back to look at the home where so many memories live. Good ones, painful ones, all tangled together. The street outside was silent, the kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. She stepped out and approached her car. When she opened the door and sat down, her hands rested on the steering wheel for a long moment. Her eyes were damp, her breathing unsteady, but there was a strength growing deep inside her, the kind that forms only after too many battles have been fought. She could still feel Mendeecees' eyes on her from the doorway, watching, waiting, hoping she might change her mind. But she started the engine anyway. She knew that if she didn't leave now, she never would. The car's headlights lit up the road ahead, dark, unfamiliar, but open. She pulled away slowly, the house shrinking behind her, the memories fading into the shadows of the night. As she drove down the street, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. She wasn't scared. She was sad, yes, hurt deeply, but she wasn't afraid of what came next. The night might be long, but every night eventually becomes morning. Might be long, but every night eventually becomes morning.